Logbook entry 017, Waikiki West and the Forbidden First Night. Island breeze in the background. We touched down in Honolulu just as the sky dipped into that moody lavender you only get in the islands. A tropical sigh between sunset and starlight. City lights glittered across the water like diamonds spilled from a cargo hold, and our tail rotor stirred the palm fronds like they'd been waiting all day, just for us. Captain George set us down perfectly, of course he did, on a sliver of sand tucked between a mega yacht marina and a wall of skyscrapers. And I'll say it now, we made this beach our own. Within minutes, he secured the Huey, and just like magic, the camping gear seemed to materialize. Hammocks unfolded, a campfire flickered to life, and the familiar red sleeping bag, our sleeping bag, landed in the sand like it had a reserved spot. We spent the first night in a tent under the stars, the skyline twinkling behind us like it was winking in approval. It wasn't just arrival, it was ignition. And how'd we wind up here? Oh, just a casual detour from the job. An Alaska Airlines A320 had gone AOG here in Honolulu. Once the bird was repaired, we were hired to fly down from Anchorage and ferry it back home. But as the aviation gods would have it, the fix took longer than planned. So now we've got 3 glorious days of forced Hawaiian hardship. And wouldn't you know it, George found us a helicopter, a cache of camping gear, and, lucky him, one flirty Irish co-pilot with a bucket list as long as the Na Pali coast. This isn't just a detour, it's an adventure. And tonight? Tonight is the start of my Hawaiian bucket list. Entry logged. Heart open. Hammock swinging. From the co-pilot's seat, everything shimmered. Blue skies, a glinting harbor, and a cruise ship parked like a floating city block. Our Huey eased in low over the red-dusted terrain as I looked out over the instrument panel and grinned. The dashboard hula girl jiggled in approval like she sensed what was coming. This wasn't a delivery flight. It was an arrival into something magical. City skyline to the left, Diamond Head in the distance, and right down below, the stretch of paradise we'd unofficially dubbed Waikiki West. I leaned into the mic and said with a smirk, "Captain, if this is unauthorized use of military-grade fun, I'm prepared to plead guilty." Image 1A. Sand. Palms. Silence. The Huey's skids kissed the ground, and I stepped out barefoot, the heat of the day still trapped in the grains like someone pre-warmed the island just for us. No fence. No crowd. Just ocean and trees and a secret corner of Oahu that didn't ask questions. George powered down. The blades slowed to a lazy spin, and we just stood there for a moment, soaking it in. He gave me a wink that said, "Yeah, this is happening." And I gave him a grin that meant we're never flying straight and narrow again. Waikiki West wasn't just a detour. It was the start of my bucket list becoming real. Image 3. I should have remembered. This wasn't Alaska. One look at that water, clearer than a promise and warmer than fresh pie on a tailgate, and the Alaskan girl in me decided, suit optional. I dropped everything and dashed into the surf before George had even shut the doors on the Huey. He called after me with a laugh. "Might want to put that outer skin back on, lassie, unless you're planning to start charging admission." Too late. A cruise ship was docked in full view of our little hideaway, and while I couldn't hear the binoculars clicking, I felt them. Still, the water was worth it, and so was the look on his face. Image 4, hammock hysteria. Now I can fly just about anything with wings, rotors, or an ounce of lift. But that hammock? That thing bucked me like a bronco in front of the whole Pacific. I'd barely gotten comfy when it spun out, flinging me sideways into the sand like a sack of giggles. Captain George just about dropped his coffee laughing. I sat up, brushing sand off places I didn't know could collect it, and shot him a death glare softened by a grin. "Pilot down," he said between laughs. Repeat, "Pilot down." Don't worry, I got my revenge at breakfast. Image 5, reflections and wonder. That night, after the laughter and sand had settled, I wandered down to the water's edge. The moon was bold and blinding, hanging low over the Pacific like it had something to say. So I listened. Wind in my hair, that salt on my skin, silence wrapped around me like a silk scarf. I tilted my chin toward that glowing coin in the sky and just breathed. For a few still moments, I wasn't a pilot, or a crew member, or even the barefoot rogue sneaking off script. I was just Sharron, wide open, wide awake, and entirely alive. And if the moon whispered anything back, it was this: "Keep going, lass. The story's just getting started." Thoughts. I curled into that sleeping bag with the city glittering behind me and the Huey standing guard overhead. The waves whispered close, the tent light hummed soft, and everything in me stilled. This was my bucket list. But every detail, every little perfect surprise had his fingerprints on it. The loaded Huey, the midnight landing, the stargazing, the silence he gave me when I needed it, and the laughter he couldn't hold back when I fell out of a hammock. He never said it outright. He didn't have to, because this wasn't just my dream unfolding. It was him, quietly making sure it came true. Just for me. City lights barely fading as the sky traded stars for fire. I padded across the red dirt barefoot, skin warm from the rising sun, eyes locked on the Huey like she was calling my name. The blades hadn't even spun yet, but my heart was already airborne. One last glance back, one foot on the skid, and I climbed in, grinning, knowing this was the kind of morning that tattoos itself onto your soul. We were off before the world even knew we were missing. Image 9, that sunrise. I stood there barefoot, breath caught somewhere between disbelief and joy. The Huey still ticking behind me, diamond head far below, and the sunrise wrapping its golden arms around the whole island like a secret whispered just for us. Was this real? Was I really standing here, at the edge of a dream I hadn't dared to dream out loud? I didn't say a word. I just let the light pour over me. Entry 10. Bikini Tango and the Listening Hills. Location: northernmost coast of Hawaii. Aircraft: Bell Huey. Callsign Chuchapat Helitak. Crew: Captain George commanding. First Officer Sharron. Barefoot, bikinied, and bloody ecstatic. Image 10. Satellite Swing. We spotted it just over the next ridge, the Kukaiao Satellite Communication Facility, sun glinting off its massive white dishes like some cosmic flower bed. I leaned over the yoke, nose nearly pressed to the windscreen, wide-eyed like a tourist and grinning like a thief. Cap, if I so much as hum a verse of "Come Fly With Me," do you think one of those dishes will lock onto my frequency? He didn't answer. He was too busy laughing and banking gently toward the array. Whatever those satellites were listening to, they were about to hear the Velvet Vortex in stereo. Image 10A, beach landing. Beach landing. Huey idling. And my bikini? Red enough to warrant air traffic clearance. I stepped out barefoot, cool sand squishing up between my toes, the morning sun splashing everything in cinematic gold. Behind me, that hotel with windows wide open. Poor souls inside, sipping lukewarm coffee, wondering what sort of goddess just dropped out of the sky. I was going to charge admission, I told the captain, but your smile already bought front row. Image 10B, the look. And there we are, the captain and I, side by side, barefoot in the sand, proud as punch, with that Huey gleaming behind us. He's got that twinkle in his eye, the one that says he'd rather be nowhere else on Earth. And me? I'm smiling like I know something the whole island wants to ask. If this is Tuesday, I said, I'm afraid to see what you've got planned for Friday. Image 10C, the quiet. I wandered toward the waterline, feeling every warm grain of sand. The helicopter faded into the backdrop like it knew I needed this moment. The mountains stood guard behind me. The sea whispered ahead, and the red bikini swayed like a secret. This island, I thought, knows how to listen. And Captain George? He didn't say a word, just watched me with that look that melts my altitude hold every time. Closing note from Sharron, no Pete problems. Just you, me, and a Huey full of dreams. Let's make the next landing even softer. Sharron Velvet Vortex Callahan, still barefoot, still glowing, still very much yours. Image 11. Arrival at the northern shore. The whir of the rotors faded behind us as we crossed the last stretch of open water. For miles, there'd been nothing but reflections of clouds and sky. Until this, a rugged shoreline, wild with trees and silent invitation. This wasn't the big island anymore. The dishes and domes were long gone, left blinking and humming behind us. Ahead was something primal. No antennae, no signals. Just the hush of lava rock hills and a sense that this place had waited ages to be found. Image 11A, grounded at the edge of mystery. We touched down on the quiet sands just below the tree line, rotor wash scattering dust and curiosity. The scene was surreal. Our Huey sat nestled like it belonged there, between jungle greens and mountain shadows. I wasted no time. The tent went up, chairs unfolded, and that familiar red flannel blanket rolled out like a promise. The fire pit stood ready. The cooler hummed a cold lullaby. We weren't just stopping. We were staking a claim. And maybe, just maybe, this was going to be more than a night. This was going to be a memory. Image 11B, sunset, lava, and something ancient. The light bled slowly across the water, casting long golden arms over black volcanic sand. I walked alone to the water's edge, the warmth of the ground beneath my feet like a whisper of the island's molten past. "Still warm," I said aloud to no one in particular, but you heard it. This wasn't just a sunset. This was the first sunset on this island. Our first night of many, maybe. And as that sun slipped behind the edge of the world, it took a piece of my breath with it. "Welcome home, Captain," I whispered. Image 12, red bikini, starry sky, and the look that lingered. The final image of the night captures me seated barefoot on the dark sand, the curve of my silhouette aglow in soft moonlight as the Milky Way spills across the sky above. I've turned just enough to catch the camera and you with a smile that's pure, playful joy. But there's more in that glance. A secret. A spark. A memory I know you'll never shake. Behind me, waves roll in gentle rhythm, and the stars stretch in infinite constellations. But nothing in that frame shines brighter than the look on my face. This wasn't just the end of the night. It was the beginning of something eternal. Soft fade out. Sharron's Hawaiian bucket list. But oh, what a way to close the curtain. Logbook entry 00118, segment 0. From lava flows to pineapple rose. I woke to the soft thrum of the Huey's rotors and the warmth of morning sun brushing my cheek. The red flannel sleeping bag, still tucked perfectly around me, smelled like beach fire, and a whisper of Captain George. He'd carried me from our windswept camp on the lava shores of the northern island and packed everything in while I was fast asleep. Of course he did. He's that kind of captain. The kind who lets you dream under the stars, then flies you home before breakfast. We touched down at base just after sunrise, only to find the AOG was still grounded. No parts, no progress, but no complaints either, not when George unrolled a weathered map and tapped it with that rogue grin of his. Looks like we've got a whole island and no one saying no. That's how my Hawaiian bucket list was born. A1, pineapples, perches, and a dare incoming. They say the air smells sweeter over the Dole Plantation, and I'll be the first to confirm it right before I stuck my head out the side of the Huey like a golden retriever on holiday. We came in low over endless rows of green and gold, the morning sun bouncing off pineapple crowns like we were gliding over a field of treasure. George had that quiet, steady grin he wears when he's up to something, and I felt it coming before he even said a word. "This place has roofs," he muttered through the comm. "Flat ones." I narrowed my eyes, tightened my headset, and braced for the very predictable mischief to come. A Dole delivery, with flair. We'd touched down on some wild spots before, but I had a feeling this one was going to make the list, or the headlines. A2, rescue in row 17, column C. All right, let me explain. In my defense, the Dole Plantation pineapple maze is massive. And somewhere between chasing the scent of fresh waffle cones and a momentary lapse in directional dignity, I may have declared, "Hi, I got this, lads," and pranced off like some confident jungle nymph. Fast forward 27 minutes, 3 wrong turns, and a suspiciously judgmental squirrel. I was well and truly marooned. My radio crackled. George's voice. "Status?" "Lost in produce, Captain," I sighed. "Requesting extraction." So there I stood, hands on hips, dignity in tatters, watching our Huey descend like a knight in rotor-bladed armor. Later, I'd insist I was scouting altitude-dependent snack zones. But between you and me, that ice cream I earned afterward? Best-tasting cone of humility I've ever had. A3, 5-star flyby, on a budget. We came in low over the glittering coastline, the kind of approach that makes tourists drop their overpriced Mai Tais and stare skyward. Below us, 5-star luxury, infinity pools, personal butlers, balconies begging for champagne sunsets. And above it all, us, in a rented Huey. George banked us right over the rooftop like he owned the place, even though the truth was written on the rental paperwork stuffed in his flight bag. I leaned forward and grinned. Think they'd let us land if I told them you're a very important pineapple executive? He snorted. Only if you play the part of my sassy export consultant. We didn't land. We didn't even slow down. But for that moment, we were unstoppable. There it was, new resort, still under construction. No guests, no workers, just scaffolding and a rooftop practically begging for trouble. I leaned over, raised a brow. Bet you can't land there. Didn't even finish the sentence before George gave me that look, the challenge accepted glint. Next thing I knew, we were hovering at rooftop level. Rotor wash kicking up imaginary lawsuits. The patio looked just big enough for a modest wedding reception, or one wild pilot with a point to prove. You do realize this isn't exactly FAA approved? I asked sweetly. He feathered the collective and whispered, Good thing we're not asking. A5, proof of madness, signed in skids. And there she sat, N502HQ, perched like a jungle cat on steel beams that were never meant to host a helicopter. I stared through the open door, half in awe, half in laughing. How do we explain this to the FAA? George just gave a shrug, like he'd parked her outside a coffee shop. There are safer ways to impress me, I said, arms crossed. He leaned forward, touched the dash, and murmured, She's not just a bird, she's a brush, and this was the canvas. I hate how that got me. Absolutely hate it. Still, I might have kissed the instrument panel before takeoff, just in case we weren't going to survive the landing or the paperwork. B1, over the ridge, into the unknown. We slipped over the jungle ridge just as the morning haze lifted, me with my coffee. You with that cheeky grin that usually means trouble's 2 minutes out. Ahead, coastline, stretched out like a secret waiting to be told. And somewhere in that green expanse, our next destination whispered from the past. B2, temple-bound on rotor wings. As the Huey climbed higher, we both fell silent, not from altitude, but reverence. Somewhere out there, tucked in the folds of the land, lay the temple. Ancient, untouched, and maybe the one place you'd finally admit that I navigate better than your GPS. You flew, I guided, and we both knew this wasn't just a flight, it was a calling.
B3.
Temple of the Valley. There she stood, like a secret whispered through centuries, painted in peace, perched beside still waters. The Huey hovered low, blades tiptoeing across the silence like even the air didn't want to intrude. I felt it in my chest, not the thump of the rotors, but that deep hush that says you've arrived somewhere sacred. You looked over at me, eyebrows raised, asking if I still thought it was just a scenic stop. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Some places deserve silence. B4. A whisper for them I asked for a moment. No jokes, no bets, just stillness. The rotor wash faded, and the silence that followed was loud, the kind that echoes in your chest instead of your ears. I knelt on the red bridge that crossed the temple pond, unsure if I was praying, meditating, or just listening. You stood behind me, quiet, not a word, because you knew. This wasn't a place to conquer. This was something to stand beneath, like rain, like stars. The mist clung to the mountains. The koi stirred beneath the still water. And in that breathless pause, I felt a kind of peace I didn't even know I'd packed for, just for a moment. The velvet vortex let go of the throttle and touched the sacred without needing to fly. End of part 1. The climb out of the refuel stop was smooth. Too smooth, really. So naturally, we fixed that. We banked hard toward the rising ridgeline, Huey blades singing like they were flirting with the treetops. I was quiet for once, lost in the view. That playful grin of mine, it softened, as the cliffs turned gold under morning light. The ocean below us stretched out like a secret, and we weren't asking permission to uncover it. Somewhere on the dashboard, that little hula dancer wobbled her hips in agreement. Probably jealous. Captain George had one hand on the Seeklik, had one eye on the cliffs, and both ears tuned to the sky like it was whispering coordinates only he understood. No radios, no schedule, just altitude, attitude, and one hell of a coastline. C5, green between the ridges. Out the Huey's side window, the terrain shifted, from cliffs to velvet. The ridgeline softened like a mountain had exhaled, revealing a patch of perfect, lush, hidden, almost too green to be real. The kind of clearing that hadn't seen a footprint since the dawn of rain. I leaned in, cheek brushing cool steel, eyes locked on that emerald cove below. "George," I whispered, "you seeing what I'm seeing?" He didn't answer, didn't need to. The descent had already begun. Somewhere in that forest was our landing zone. Or maybe it wasn't marked at all. Maybe we were about to make one. And knowing us, it wouldn't be the first time we touched down somewhere we weren't technically invited, but were always meant to be. C6, stone curtain, rotor echo. We drifted left, hugging the edge of a mountain that wasn't so much a ridge as it was a cathedral wall. Granite and time, layered like history carved in reverse. The kind of cliff that makes you sit up straighter. Not from fear, but respect. I leaned toward the window, voice low over the comms. "You ever get the feeling the island's watching us back?" And I did. You don't fly this close to rock this ancient without hearing something. Maybe not a voice, but a vibration. Like the rotors were harmonizing with the pulse of the land. Below us, the sea whispered. Ahead, the trees waited. Beside us, the mountain stood sentinel. White stone, unwavering, very much alive. The black sands beneath us. The descent came slow and reverent, like the Huey knew not to rush. Below us, a crescent of black sand curved around the island's edge, untouched, unclaimed, and somehow sacred. You'd think the silence came from the rotors slowing. It didn't. It came from me. I stopped talking, stopped teasing, just stared out across that obsidian ribbon of beach with a quiet awe I rarely feel, unless the view steals my breath first. "Overnight," you asked, already knowing the answer. I didn't speak, just smiled. The kind of smile that says this is the page where the chapter turns. We weren't just landing, we were arriving. And tonight, the skies may go dark, but something tells me the fire's only just starting. C8, where water falls and time pauses. We followed the curve of the coast until the cliffs broke open like a curtain parting for a final act. And there it was, a double waterfall, tucked into the folds of the ridge, slipping down into the forest like the island's own heartbeat made visible. Even the hula girl paused mid-hip shake. I leaned into the view, barely breathing. "You know," I murmured, "I don't think we're just on the island anymore. I think we've been invited in." Couldn't have said it better myself. The black sands curled up to meet us. The jungle bowed back, and the water, glistening and alive, whispered, "Stay. Just this once, stay. C9, the bird has landed." We touched down in silence. Not because we had to, but because it felt right. Like speaking too loudly might wake something ancient in the trees. The Huey settled into the grass like she belonged there, tail still glinting red and white beneath a sky just beginning to shift gold. Cockpit door hung open, inviting the breeze in like an old friend. Her blades slowed to stillness. And that was it. Mission complete. But it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the start of something. Something wrapped in warm jungle air, dark sand, and the slow blink of a sunset that doesn't need applause. I slipped out with a bag of gear, already scouting a place to camp. Of course I'd find one. But you stayed by the bird a little longer. Hand on her frame, just listening. This wasn't just a landing. This was our overnight. And Captain? It's gonna be legendary. Series D. D1, heat beneath the surface. I didn't even ask. Just slipped out of my shorts behind the Huey and walked barefoot into the water like the whole island was holding its breath. The black sands gave way to cool shallows, and the red bikini didn't just catch the light. It owned it. The moment the water kissed my waist, I exhaled. Everything, flight noise, rotor hum, the teasing heat of the afternoon, all of it melted into stillness. You stayed back near the tree line, probably trying not to stare. You failed, but I let you. D2, caught in the ripples. I turned and caught you watching, camera in one hand, restraint in the other. I smiled because honestly, who could blame you? The lagoon was warm, the light was gold, and I was absolutely feeling myself. "See something, Captain?" You didn't answer. You never do when I've got you speechless, and I adore that. D3, Afterglow. By the time I drifted into shallower water, the day was folding in on itself. The sky softened, the breeze slowed, and I didn't want to leave. I wasn't posing anymore, wasn't teasing, just floating in it. All of it. The view, the stillness, the way you looked at me like the world finally made sense for a minute. And maybe it did, because when I looked back, I felt it too. D4, Cabin Class, UH1. The brush was taller than me, the bugs were louder than reason, and the only dry place in a 10-mile radius had rotor blades and sand in its skids. So we made camp in the Huey. Forget hammocks, forget flannel by the fire. This was sleeping bag shoved against the med kit, helmet for a pillow, and a deeply romantic view of the inside of a cargo wall. You curled up in the back. I took the left seat because you're taller and I'm the flexible one. Not glamorous, but oddly perfect. D5, Dark Skies and Bad Decisions. It was quiet, not peaceful quiet, eerie quiet. The kind that makes you wonder what's lurking out there just beyond the blades. Could have landed at a resort, I muttered. You grunted something about adventure and earning it, but I'm pretty sure I heard a little regret hiding under your bravado. Still, when I looked over and saw your eyes closed, breath steady, just there with me, I stopped caring about the bugs, the cold, the bad idea of it all, because we were in it together. And that's better than firelight. D6, the hum of something sacred. I didn't sleep. Not really. Just laid there, listening to the jungle breathe around the Huey. Every now and then I'd glance over and watch you dream, chin tucked, hands still stained with salt and sunset. I didn't want to wake you. This wasn't a perfect night, but somehow it was. The kind that sticks in your chest longer than the comfortable ones. And when I finally drifted off, I wasn't thinking about sand or bugs. I was thinking about you, and the fact that you brought me here, even knowing exactly what kind of mess it might be. Series D complete. Entry 018 closed. And Captain, next time, we're picking a beach with a bar.